The Rays are out to a 2 to nothing series lead over the Astros in the ALCS, and the Braves take game 1 of the NLCS last night thanks to a ninth inning offensive outburst. Hello everyone and welcome into this Tuesday, October 13th edition of Around the Bases from 110 Sports live streaming as always on the 110 Sports Network at 110sportsmedia.com/live, twitch.tv/110sports, and available on demand on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Just search for 110 Sports. I'm Chris Brown, and we've got a lot to talk about as always today on the show. Though we have brought things from trying to track 8 different series at the same time now down to just 2 series. We're in the league championship series. The last time we talked on Thursday of last week, we were still waiting for some of the division series to be wrapping up, and now we've got our final 4 teams left. We have a team that already is out to a 2 to nothing series lead, and we have I guess you could say a mild surprise for the winner of game 1 of the NLCS. So let's go ahead and just jump right into today's broadcast. Here's what you can expect on the show. It's pretty simple formula at this point. We'll start by talking about the ALCS. We'll update you on where that stands right now, and I'll give you my takeaways from the first 2 games, what it means moving forward in this series, and finally my prediction. We'll go through news and notes. We have a couple of big ones today. We have a manager that got fired in a very surprising move, at least on the surface, and some other big news headlines not specifically related to the playoffs to discuss. We'll get into that. Then we'll dive into the NL side of the bracket and the Braves and Dodgers series. I'll give you the update from game 1, what I took away from game 1, and my predictions for the series there. So of course, just 1 game in, it's hard to it's hard to make too much of that. But we'll talk about the NLCS as well, plus a couple of big injury updates just this morning from that series, one involving the Braves and one involving the Dodgers that's going to have a big impact on today's game. So we'll discuss that coming up on the broadcast, and then we'll end things with what's on deck. It gets a little bit more straightforward here as we move deeper and deeper into the playoffs. We'll talk a little bit about the matchups on tap for today and tomorrow as we get out of here on a Tuesday broadcast. So let's start with the ALCS. In the first 2 games of the ALCS, the Astros out-hit the Rays 19-10. They struck out 26 Rays batters, and Astros starters allowed just 3 earned runs in 13 innings pitched. Yet it's the Rays who are out to the 2 to nothing series lead thanks to starters grinding out strong outings, a bullpen that continues to impress, timely hits, excellent defense, and the long ball. In game 1, Tampa Bay on Sunday evening with the 2-1 victory as Randy Arozarena homered yet again. Mike Zunino drove in the go-ahead run with a 5th-inning RBI single, and the Rays bullpen dominated yet again as they won Game 1 2-1 on Sunday. And so let's break down Game 1 a little bit here first. Blake Snell got off to a bit of a rocky start for the Rays. He gave up a solo home run to Jose Altuve in what turned out to be a 29-pitch first inning. But Snell gutted out 5 innings even without his best stuff, throwing 105 pitches and allowing just that 1 single run. With 3 of the Rays' top relievers throwing multiple innings just 2 days before on Friday in Game 5 of the ALDS, Kevin Cash, he couldn't turn to his A group of relievers necessarily right away after Blake Snell's exit. So he had to turn to the B group, if you will, of John Curtis, Ryan Thompson, and Aaron Loop, and then one of their top relievers, Diego Castillo, and the 4 of them combined to shut out an Astros offense that, of course, as we've talked about, has been on fire the rest of that game, those 4 allowing just 3 hits in 4 innings, no runs. Castillo in particular, he came on and got the final outs. He's been outstanding. He was outstanding in this game. He got a He came on with one out and the bases loaded in the eighth inning of that game for the Astros and induced a ground ball double play on the very first pitch he threw. So that was obviously crucial. He then tossed a scoreless ninth inning to pick up the save here in game one. Framber Valdez got the call for the Astros. He's been their best starting pitcher this postseason, and he certainly impressed in this game as well. He was very good, just not quite good enough that he didn't get enough run support. Rosarena homered off of him in the fourth inning for his fourth home run of the postseason, as he became the fifth rookie ever with 4+ homers in a postseason. And then Mike Zunino, the Rays catcher, who hit just 147 this season. He's never been a high average hitter. And Zunino, who had just one RBI single in all of the regular season, well, he had that go-ahead RBI single in the fifth, as mentioned. Valdez's final line: 6 innings pitched, 4 hits, 2 earned runs, 8 strikeouts, and 4 walks. So obviously the 4 walks, that's not ideal, but he really did have some incredible stuff, as evidenced by those 8 strikeouts. But like I said, just not enough run support as the Rays pitchers started by Snell, and then their bullpen held the Astros to just that 1 run. 3 Houston relievers came on and kept the Rays off the board the rest of the way after Valdez's exit, but that would not end up mattering. Of course, with the Astros unable to score again, they stranded 10 runners on base in game 1. And game 1 was a really exciting, intense game, a fun game. It was, of course, a very close game, with the Astros threatening multiple times down the stretch. The Rays pitching, though, the battle of the Rays pitching versus the Astros surging offense, the Rays pitching took game 1 honors on Sunday. So that's the basics of game 1 of the ALCS. And then we go into game 2 yesterday. And it was Tampa Bay outfielder Manuel Margot who was the hero in Game 2, as he hit a 3-run home run after a crucial Astros error, and then made a spectacular catch in right field as the Rays defeated the Houston Astros 4-2 yesterday to jump out to that 2-0 series lead. Now, with the runner on first base and 2 outs in the bottom of the first inning, Jose Altuve, the Astros' second baseman, made a throwing error on a pretty easy ground ball that first baseman Yuli Gurriel also should have been able to handle. It was really a pretty sloppy play all the way around. Altuve was not a long throw. It was a pretty easy throw, and he just threw it into the dirt. And meanwhile, Gurriel didn't seem to be he didn't seem to be putting his full effort into it necessarily. I mean, it was one of those easy ground balls where if you're the first baseman, you kind of just stand there, you catch it. It's an easy throw from Altuve, but Altuve bounces it. Gurriel wasn't really ready to react to that at all, and it's charged on an error to Altuve, which was deserved for him, but also a mistake there by Gurriel. He really should have been able to dig that out. A sloppy play by both of them, and then the Rays would make them pay right away as Manuel Margot homered. He was next up. He homered. He hit the 3-run shot to put the Rays up 3-0 early. And as it turns out, that would be enough in terms of runs scored by the Rays to win this game. But it wasn't it for the run scoring in this game. After this inning, though, Lance McCullers got the start for the Astros in Game 2. He really started dealing in what was a pretty dominant outing for him, as he held Tampa Bay to just 1 hit after that up until the 7th inning, when catcher Mike Zunino hit a mammoth 454-foot home run. He absolutely crushed it to center field, and McCullers finished with 11 strikeouts, no walks, and just that single, just 1 earned run from the home run. From the Zunino home run, because the Margot home run, that was all unearned, because they would have gotten out of it if not for that Altuve error. And those 4 runs would be all the Rays would need. Really, even just the 3 runs would be all they need, thanks to their ability to pitch out of jams and make big defensive plays. Charlie Morton got the start for the Rays, the veteran, in Game 2, and he pushed through 5 scoreless innings with 5 strikeouts and one walk on 96 pitches. And then Peter Fairbanks came in for the Rays. He gave up one earned run on a Carlos Correa homer. That was his fifth home run of the postseason. Aaron Loup and Ryan Thompson both held the Astros scoreless, and then Nick Anderson came on in the ninth for the Rays. And that's when things got interesting again, as Houston loaded the bases with no outs. And then George Springer hit a rocket up the middle on a hop, but second baseman Brandon Lau was positioned perfectly there, and he was able to start a double play. The run did score, and that made it 4-2. And then Anderson proceeded to walk Altuve and Michael Brantley on four pitches each. Certainly not a good situation there, and that loaded the bases again with the Astros down just 2 runs. So that was the tying run at second base, the go-ahead run at first base, but after those 2 walks, Anderson was able to get a fly out to end it. The Rays winning yesterday 4-2, and just like that, it's a 2-0 series lead for the Tampa Bay Rays over the Astros in the ALCS. So that's a breakdown of basically what happened the last few days in that series. Now I've got 3 big takeaways as far as, why it is the Rays have this 2-0 series lead and what we make of it. The first one is very simple. Defense. The Rays have shown great defense in this series. The Astros have not, and that has mattered in games that have been very close, generally speaking. The Rays got incredible plays from their infield. Shortstop Willie Adames making some very athletic plays. Third baseman Joey Wendell has had multiple diving stops to start outs on ground balls. First baseman Ji-Man Choi has practically spent half his time on the field, on the ground, and doing the splits to bring in throws from his infielders to make picks on balls out of the dirt. He's been outstanding on plenty of athletic plays from Ji-Man Choi at first base. And then, of course, there was Margot, who, as I mentioned, he made an incredible catch. It was the second inning of yesterday's game with 2 on and 2 outs for the Astros. George Springer hitting one down the right field line. Margot traveling 102 feet to make the catch. He leaped. He fell over the padded railing atop of a wall and then fell to land in a walkway. It was really a sensational catch. Really should just check it out yourself online. It was an outstanding play, one of the best defensive plays I have seen in an MLB postseason game. He just went for it. I mean, he leaped, he went over the railing. Fortunately, he was okay because that could have been very serious. There's also, I should mention, from the Rays and their defense, some great defensive positioning in these first couple of games of this series. Particularly a few plays where second baseman Brandon Lau was in the ideal spot and not his normal spot where you'd expect the second baseman to be. So whether he was positioned up the middle or even on the third base side of the second base bag, there were a few plays where some defensive positioning really paid off because there have been some hard hit balls from this Astros team, from guys like Correa, from George Springer, but in several instances, they may have been big hits for the Astros, driven in runs, if not for the Rays' defensive positioning. So they absolutely should get a good deal of credit on that. As for the Astros defense, like I said, it let them down, particularly in Game 2. And we know this is a Rays team that can capitalize on that. Altuve had not made a single throwing error in the entire regular season. And then he made that costly one in the first inning, and then he did basically the exact same thing in the third inning, throwing an easy grounder into the dirt that Gurriel couldn't dig out. Fortunately for the Astros, in that scenario, it didn't come back to hurt them like before, but it didn't end up affecting that play didn't end up affecting the game. But Altuve's error in the first certainly did. And so, defense. That's takeaway number one. The Rays have shown great defense, and it's mattered. It's helped potentially avoid some big Astros hits and avoid some big Astros rallies. And meanwhile, the Astros, it's not like they've been sloppy all over the place. They've been a very good a very good defensive team this season. But in a game like this, and when you're at this point, when you've got two great teams, when you're in the ALCS, it's a matter of a couple of plays, whether they be, a couple of pitches, a couple of swings, a couple of defensive plays can make all the difference. Second takeaway here I have is capitalizing offensively. Simply put, the Rays have done it, the Astros have not in the first two games of the series. And like I said a little bit ago here, the Astros have actually out-hit the Rays 19-10 in these two games. Houston's starting pitchers have been good, and the Astros bullpen has not given up a single earned run, though they've only pitched 3 innings. So it's really been all about timely hitting and the home run, the long ball. The Astros left 18 runners on base in Game 1, and they left 20 on base yesterday. That is a huge, a huge number. The Rays, meanwhile, they had just 6 hits in Game 1 and just 4 hits in Game 2, but they made them count. In Game 1, they scored with the Randy Arozarena homer, and then their second run was scored because there was a walk, and then a ground out advanced that runner to second, and then a ground out advanced that runner to third, and then an RBI single by Mike Zunino. So it's not exactly as if they've been mashing and having all these huge rallies and 5 hits in a row and scoring all these runs. They've just been manufacturing runs and then also hitting the home runs as well. They've been getting the timely hits. They've been doing what it takes when they're in those situations to score runs. In Game 2, it was, of course, Margot capitalizing on that Altuve error, and then a home run from Zunino. So, look, they're coming up with the timely hits when it matters the most, and the Astros are not. And some of that, of course, is, like I said, the reason the Astros have not is due to factors like, the Rays pitchers getting out of it and great defense, but it's kind of as simple as that as well. Tampa Bay has scored 79% of their runs via the home run this season, this postseason, I should say. 79% of their runs via the home run this postseason. And according to ESPN Stats and Info, that is the highest rate by a team with at least 5 games played in a single postseason. So you're seeing how much the home run is playing a role in the Rays scoring. And the Rays, not a team that going into this postseason, sure, they had hit their fair share of home runs, but that's never been sort of the Rays style that we all associate with them. We don't think, oh boy, the Rays, they're just hitting home runs left and right. I mean, that's what we think of the Yankees and these other teams that are these great offenses. The Rays, the Braves, but we don't think of the Rays like that. But the home runs have mattered for them this postseason. There hasn't necessarily been one guy who's been delivering them. It's been Randy Arozarena, I should say, definitely the most. But from Mike Zunino to Manuel Margot to Kevin Kiermaier to several other players who've come up big, from Mike Brosseau and several others who've come up big with the home run for the Rays. A final takeaway here is I've alluded to it here. We've talked about it a bit. The Rays pitchers just getting it done, still getting it done. Now, as evidenced by the Astros, they had 9 hits in Game 1. They had 10 hits yesterday. Tampa Bay's pitchers haven't been completely lights out. They have not completely limited the Astros. They haven't, made the Astros look foolish. The Astros have had some pretty hard hit balls, but at the end of the day, you look up at the scoreboard and you see that the Rays pitchers allowed just 3 runs in 2 games to the Astros to begin this series. So the Rays pitchers are finding a way to get it done nonetheless. Neither Blake Snell in Game 1 nor Charlie Morton yesterday had their absolute best stuff. That was clear. Snell gave up 6 hits, 2 walks. Morton gave up 5 hits. Neither of them was just completely dominating, but they gave up just 1 earned run between them, and that was from Blake Snell in Game 1. Kevin Cash hasn't been able to keep going back to his top 2 or 3 relievers for multiple innings a game after the starter exits. So other relievers, as we talked about, are being counted on for big innings against a Houston lineup that's been surging this postseason. We've talked about it. And they've largely kept them at bay. Rays relievers have posted a 2.25 ERA in the first 2 games. Of course, Very small sample size, but that's what we're working with right now. And when the Astros have gotten runners on, Rays pitchers have gotten out of it, whether they've induced weak contact or gotten the strikeout, or the Astros have squared up the ball pretty well, but hit it right at a well-positioned infielder. No matter how it happened, the Rays pitchers have navigated out of trouble and avoided a big innings from Houston in this series in the first two games. And they're still getting it done. It hasn't been easy per se, and they haven't been able to rely on the same couple of guys, but the Rays pitchers are still getting it done against this Astros offense in the first two games of this series. And those three things combined, Rays pitchers finding a way, the Rays capitalizing offensively when the Astros haven't, and the Rays playing great defense when the Astros haven't. Those are three of the big keys to why the Rays are out to a 2-0 series lead, despite many of the major statistics tilting in the Astros' favor. It's pretty much can be broken down, I think, into those couple of key areas. So finally, my prediction for the ALCS. Of course, we didn't get a chance. I didn't get a chance to discuss this on the broadcast here before this series started, because of course the Rays didn't defeat the Yankees until late last week, so we didn't know that matchup until Friday night. On the Bonfire podcast on Saturday, I know I predicted the Rays to win this series. I'm not sure if I put a game number on it, whether it would be, I think, maybe 6 games. I'm clearly sticking with the Rays here as my prediction for this series. So the only question in my mind, I should say, is whether I'm predicting the Rays to win in 5 games or 6, because at this point I'm doubtful that this series is going to go to 7 games, and I'm very doubtful that the Astros are going to come back to win it. I think I'm going to predict Rays in 6. I don't know how much it even matters as far as how many games it goes. I'm still going to go with Rays in 6 because this is an Astros team that's not going to quit. This is a team that has plenty of postseason experience. Several of these players have a great deal of postseason experience, of course, and they've been down, and that experience includes being down in postseason series. So I'm certainly not. I don't think this is gonna. I highly doubt that this is gonna be a series sweep or anything like that. But the Rays have clearly shown, though, that they are the deeper, more complete team, and now they've got a big edge with a 2-0 series lead. Statistically speaking, teams that have won the first 2 games of any best-of-7 postseason series have gone on to win that series 85% of the time. But again, like I said, none of these games have been blowouts. The Rays have not been dominating. They've both been high-intensity games with a couple key moments being the difference. It's been great games to watch. It really has. But the Rays have shown that they're the better team. And I think it's just a matter of, how long does this series go? How many games are the Astros able to take? But I have Rays winning this. I'm going to say Rays in 6. All right, we're going to go ahead and take our first break of the broadcast. When we come back, after the break, we have some news and notes for you, some big headlines from the last several days. The draft order is set. We have a manager who's gotten fired yesterday, and the passing of 2 more baseball Hall of Famers. So a lot to talk about when we come back, and then we'll dive into the NLCS. So that's all coming up next here on Around the Bases from 110 Sports. All right, welcome back to Around the Bases on this Tuesday, October 13th. I'm Chris Brown. It's time to dive into our news and notes from today, some recent headlines, not specific to the postseason right now. And we're going to start with this. It's been a year full of losses, of the passings of several baseball legends, and that list has sadly grown in recent days with the passings of Whitey Ford and Joe Morgan. Ford, a native New Yorker who helped the Yankees become MLB's perennial champions in the 1950s and 60s, he died this past Thursday at the age of 91 after battling Alzheimer's disease in recent years. Ford was one of the best lefties ever to toe the rubber in the big leagues. He was widely considered the best Yankees pitcher of all time. He posted the most wins in franchise history. His 10 World Series victories still stand as the MLB record. Ford played in the majors from 1950 to 1967, all with the Yankees, alongside the likes of Mickey Mantle, Joe DiMaggio, and Yogi Berra to capture 6 championships. Nicknamed the chairman of the board, Ford won 236 games and lost just 106 games in his career for the best winning percentage of any pitcher in the 20th century at .690. The 10-time All-Star was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1974. Joe Morgan, the Hall of Fame second baseman who was the spark plug of the Big Red Machine Reds teams that dominated the National League during the 1970s, he passed away on Sunday at the age of 77. He was suffering from a nerve condition, according to the Associated Press. One of the greatest second basemen in MLB history, Morgan was a 2-time NL MVP, 10-time All-Star, and 5-time Gold Glove winner during his 22-year Major League career with the Reds, Astros, Giants, Phillies, and then the A's. The Reds won back-to-back titles in 1975 and 76, and the 5'7" Morgan was named league MVP in both years. Morgan scored 1,650 runs, stole 689 bases, hit 268 home runs, and batted .271 for his career. He was inducted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame in 1990, and his number 8 retired by the Reds in 1998. Morgan worked as a broadcaster for decades after his retirement, joining ESPN in 1990 and serving as part of the network's lead baseball broadcast team for Sunday Night Baseball up until 2010. So Whitey Ford was 91 years old. Joe Morgan was 77. Shifting gears here, in a stunning development, the White Sox announced yesterday that they're parting ways with manager Rick Renteria after he led the club to its first playoff appearance in 12 years. The team announced technically that the sides agreed to part ways, but let's be clear, Renteria was let go. He was fired. Pitching coach Don Cooper, who's been in that role with the team since 2002, will also not be returning for the White Sox. And the team had posted 7 consecutive losing seasons entering this year, but had a breakthrough campaign in the 60-game regular season, finishing 35-25. Despite this, the ending to the season was a disappointment for the White Sox, as the team held a 3-game lead in the AL Central before losing 7 of their final 8 games to fall into a tie for second. They then got knocked out of the playoffs by the A's in 3 games in the wild card series. Now, this is certainly a rough break for Rick Renteria, who was also pushed out of the Cubs job that he had for Joe Madden, and now he's being pushed out of the White Sox job for what looks like probably a big name as well. Now, Renteria drew some criticism for some questionable decisions down the stretch, and Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic, he tweeted yesterday that some of the White Sox veterans felt that Renteria needed to hold players more accountable. But the real aspect to consider here, as Rosenthal tweeted yesterday, is that the organization is moving on, as he wrote, quote, in large part because more proven candidates are becoming available. General Manager Rick Hahn said yesterday that, quote, the ideal candidate will be someone who has experience in a championship organization in recent years. Now, there's immediate speculation about potentially the White Sox hiring either A.J. Hinch or Alex Cora. Hinch, the former Astros manager, Cora, the former Red Sox manager, both of whom are currently serving 1 year suspensions as a result of the Astros sign stealing scandal. Now, both those suspensions end after the World Series, so they'll be eligible to be hired by a team for any role after the conclusion of the World Series. No comment from the White Sox about any specific names other than that manager Ozzie Guillen will not be returning to the role. That longtime manager Ozzie Guillen will not be returning to a managerial role with the White Sox. There was a report from USA Today yesterday that the team is apparently going to be reaching out to Tony La Russa, the former A's and Cardinals manager who last managed in the big leagues almost a decade ago before he retired and moved into front office roles, executive roles, advisor roles with multiple teams in recent years. But nothing concrete as far as what we might expect the White Sox to do. Other than that, it's pretty clear they're going to go after someone with experience as part of a winning a big name is what it sounds like. We don't necessarily know that it'll be someone who's managed before, maybe a bench coach from a team that's had great success in recent years. We don't know exactly, but I would expect this to be a big name. And of course, you've got the situations with AJ Hinch and Alex Cora, both of whom I think, and there's some consensus about this, that both of whom shouldn't be unofficially banned for life from Major League Baseball. Of course, they're not going to be officially banned any longer than the rest of this season through the postseason, but that there shouldn't be an unofficial, banning of these two guys from ever holding managerial jobs again. But this idea that, the White Sox parted ways with this manager who helped them get to where they are now, to bring in someone like those guys seems a little bit. It seems like there are plenty of other great candidates out there who don't have that same knock against them than that AJ Hinch, that same baggage that Hinch and Cora do. It's certainly, I can say this with confidence, it's a very attractive job now because the White Sox are in a good position to win for the better part of the next decade or more. They're set up for great long-term success with a young core reaching the major leagues and succeeding. They've also got veteran pieces who can help who are helping out in the short term. But the future is bright for this White Sox team. This is also not any sort of the rebuild is over. Now, I'm not saying that everybody they're as good as they're going to get, but the rebuild effort is over. They're ready to compete now. So whatever manager gets this job is going to be in a position to and asked to go compete from the get go. You don't have 3 years to settle in and get things going. They're going to want a manager who can get things going right away. So it's going to be a very attractive job. I imagine there's going to be a whole host of candidates interviewed, and we'll just have to see how this plays out. Do have to feel bad though for Rick Renteria. Seems like there was it's not a perfect manager. I don't I wouldn't rate him as this incredible manager based on what I've seen, but it's certainly a tough break for a guy who who helped this team. I mean, obviously a lot of it's due to talent of these players coming up, but a guy who helped this team get to where they are at this point, which is ready to really compete. So it's a tough break for him, undoubtedly. Some other news items here for you. Padres outfielder Tommy Pham underwent surgery after being stabbed in an incident in San Diego on Sunday. Pham was apparently leaving a San Diego establishment when he came across an argument taking place near his car between two people he did not know. Pham reportedly asked them to move away from his car, leading to the situation escalating. Suspects have not been identified by police, who are investigating the matter. Pham was stabbed in the lower back. Fortunately, there was no organ damage. The Padres saying last night that Pham is in good condition and expected to make a full recovery. So that aspect obviously is good to hear. The 2021 MLB draft order is officially set, and as expected, it will be determined using the normal method of reverse order by winning percentage in 2020. As part of the March 2020 agreement, but following the league's suspension due to COVID-19, Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred, he was given the power to change the order as circumstances might require, but that it didn't end up proving necessary because MLB was able to complete its 60-game regular season. And that means the Pirates, who finished 2020, the regular season, with an MLB worst 317 winning percentage, they'll have the first overall pick, followed by the Rangers, Tigers, Red Sox, and Orioles to round out the top five. The Astros, we should note, are the only team without a first-round pick. It was they were stripped of their first-round pick as a result of this sign-stealing scandal. The 2021 draft will be moved from its regular early June date to July 11th as part of the All-Star Game festivities this upcoming year, I should say, in Atlanta. Also should note that this year's draft was, of course, shortened from 40 rounds down all the way to 5 rounds due to the pandemic, but next year's is likely to be reportedly between 20 and 30 rounds. Finally, a couple of quick hit items for you. Padres pitcher Dinelson Lamet, who missed the postseason run for that team due to an arm injury. He began platelet-rich plasma therapy on his elbow on Monday, according to the San Diego Union-Tribune. The team expects the right-hander will be ready to resume pitching well before spring training. The 21-year-old had a breakout year this year before his injury with a 2.09 ERA and 93 strikeouts in 69 innings. Another San Diego starting pitching update, the San Diego Union-Tribune reporting that Mike Clevenger, who dealt with an elbow injury and lasted just 1 inning during his NLCS start, is likely headed for nothing more invasive than arthroscopic surgery, and he would have a pretty normal offseason if that is the case. Yankees broadcaster Jack Curry announced Sunday he's missed the team's postseason run after contracting COVID-19. The 55-year-old says he's feeling much better now. Twins shortstop Jorge Polanco had surgery to remove a mild bone spur and a small bone chip on the outside of his right ankle. The good news is he's expected to be ready to go for spring training. It won't be as fast of a timeline for White Sox infielder Nick Madrigal, who had left shoulder surgery and will require 5 to 6 months of recovery time. That surgery was expected after he suffered a separated left shoulder on a slide into third base back in early August. He could still be rehabbing at the beginning of spring training in 2021. And that is our news and notes for today, so we'll transition now into the NLCS, where we've had just one game as the Braves broke a 1-1 tie with a 4-run ninth inning to take down the Dodgers in Game 1 of the NLCS 5-1 on Monday, handing Dave Roberts' club its first loss in nearly 3 weeks and keeping the Braves' flawless record this postseason intact. So only one game to talk about here as the NLCS got underway last night, so let's walk through the basics of how this game played out. The Braves struck first in the first inning as Freddie Freeman homered in his very first ALCS at-bat. 1-0 Atlanta remained the score until the bottom of the fifth when Dodgers second baseman Enrique Hernandez homered off of Atlanta lefty Max Fried to tie the score at 1. And that's where the score remained all the way until the ninth inning when Atlanta's Austin Riley smashed a mammoth home run off of Blake Trinan to lead off the ninth inning and give the Braves a 2-1 lead. But the Braves weren't done as Ronald Acuna doubled, Marcell Ozuna doubled him in, and then second baseman Ozzie Albies sent a pitch into the Braves bullpen, into the glove of closer Mark Melancon, who was warming up to come in for a save that, with that home run, it was no longer a save situation. 4-run ninth inning for the Braves as they took a 5-1 lead. Mark Melancon, though, of course, still came into the game, even though it wasn't a save situation anymore. And he threw a 1-2-3 bottom of the ninth inning to secure the 5-1 victory for the Braves over the Dodgers. Now, both starting pitchers in this game were very good. Max Fried came up big again for Atlanta against the Dodgers with 6 innings of 1-run ball with 2 walks and 9 strikeouts. Now, Walker Buehler for the Dodgers, as we've noted, he hasn't pitched very deep into games. He's been dealing with a blister issue, and he did not have great command in this game. He walked a career-high 5 batters yesterday, but he struck out 7 and only allowed the 1 run on the Freeman home run. The Dodgers bullpen was good the rest of the way up until Blake Trinan in the ninth. Atlanta's bullpen was sensational yet again, with Chris Martin, Will Smith, and then Mark Melancon holding the Dodgers without a single hit after Max Fried's exit. And that was that. A 5-1 victory for the Braves as they rally in the ninth and take game one of the NLCS. An injury update for you here. The first thing to tell you about, in this game, Braves outfielder Adam Duvall was removed due to a strained left oblique, and we just learned this morning that as it looked likely would be the case, and it is true now, the Braves have removed Adam Duvall from their NLCS roster, so he'll be ineligible to return even for the World Series. He is done for the season due to a strained oblique. The team has added Johan Camargo, infielder Johan Camargo, to their roster in place of Duvall. He struggled this season offensively. Camargo did, but he brings some versatility to the roster. We could see a little bit of him at third base, potentially with Austin Riley, maybe drawing some starts in the outfield moving forward. It is a big loss for the Braves and Duvall, who had an incredible stretch of home runs in September. But obviously it's not a devastating blow to them. There are plenty of big bats in this lineup for the Braves, and Duvall was not, someone who they absolutely were counting on in this series. But it is a loss for them, a significant one for the Braves. I'm reading here now that Christian Pache, no, I'm saying that name wrong, but the rookie for the Braves, the young outfielder, the 21-year-old, is in the lineup, batting ninth and in center field for the Braves today against the Dodgers. So he starts with Duvall out. So that's your update on the injury front for the Braves as that game about to get underway later this afternoon. Now, a couple of takeaways for you from this series so far, but this series so far is just one game, so not super extensive takeaways, but here's what I've got. First off, the Braves pitching has continued to keep rolling against its biggest postseason test yet. Of course, as we talked about, the Braves had 4 shutouts in their first 5 games of this postseason. Atlanta's pitching staff has been on an incredible run, led by Max Fried and then rookie Ian Anderson. Those series, though, were against the Reds in the wild card round, the Marlins in the division series, though. So the Dodgers are obviously a much more formidable offensive opponent. So a lot of eyes were going to be on the Braves pitching, and could they continue this incredible run, at least to some degree, in the NLCS. And in game one, the Braves pitching passed the test against this incredible Dodgers offense. Fried, as mentioned, was outstanding, as were Martin, Smith, and Melancon, who were all very well rested after, thanks to the Braves' sweep of the Marlins in the NLDS. Atlanta pitchers have allowed just 6 runs through 6 games this postseason at this point. That is tied with the 1983 Orioles for the fewest runs allowed through the first 6 games of a single postseason ever. So, so far it's continuing. This Braves their pitching has still been outstanding. They were outstanding through the division series, and they were great last night against the Dodgers. The Braves' ERA in their first 6 postseason games, 0.93. That's the second lowest mark since 1913 through the first 6 postseason games. And the Braves' bullpen has posted a .39 ERA this postseason. That's just 1 earned run in 23 1/3 innings with 28 strikeouts to 4 walks. So, got to give credit to that Braves pitching staff, to the starting pitchers, Fried and Anderson, still coming up big, and especially to that Braves bullpen, they're gonna be tested and worked these next couple of days because it's Ian Anderson tonight, and then Kyle Wright in Game 3 for the Braves most likely, or maybe that's set already. Either way, there's likely going to be bullpen games down the line, so the bullpen's going to continue to be tested. It's just one game, but so far the Braves pitching has continued to dominate. Takeaway number 2 is very, very simple and kind of obvious, but the Braves, just like the Dodgers, are capable of a big late rally, just like we saw in the 9th inning last night. There are no easy outs in this Braves lineup, in a lineup with Freddie Freeman and Marcell Ozuna and Ronald Acuna Jr., it was Austin Riley. Probably, if you look at their starting lineup, maybe he's probably the weakest hitter, that the guy you're least afraid of facing. It was him who had that go-ahead blast because he has tremendous power as well. So there's just no easy outs in this Braves lineup. The Dodgers, of course, are very capable of a late inning rally. So are the Braves, and we saw that last night. Not a surprise, but maybe a reminder for people who haven't been paying as much attention to them. Third takeaway here, and this is a pretty big one, as the problems for the back end of the Dodgers bullpen are continuing. Kenley Jansen has been struggling with his velocity and his command. He seems to be sidelined from late inning high leverage situations at this point. A veteran Blake Trinan, who has been perhaps certainly one of the team's top relievers this season, perhaps the best. He gave up that home run to Riley last night and was charged with 3 earned runs. Lefty Jake McGee is another late inning option for the team. Well, he gave up the Albies home run. So there's a big question moving forward about the Dodgers, who have great pitching depth, but there's a big question about what they're going to do in the back end of their bullpen against a Braves team that, like I said, we all know can rally, can get score in a moment's notice. So Joe Kelly and Pedro Baez, their options for the ninth. Maybe we see Kenley Jansen back in there. Maybe they get creative and throw somebody like Dustin May in there for multi-inning saves. Who knows? But it's something the Dodgers are going to have to figure out because they're in a bit of a tricky situation now with that ninth inning, and they can't afford. I mean, like I said, Braves team that can rally late. Dodgers can't mess around with the late innings. So it's going to be something to monitor moving forward. One other note here, as it was noted, the Braves win last night means that teams are now 24-1 in games where they out-homer their opponent so far this postseason. So not a takeaway particular to this series, but just a re-emphasis of something we've talked about last week. Home runs, they're very important always, but they're very important in this postseason. Only one team, only one time has a team out-homered their opponent this postseason and lost. So that's pretty remarkable right there. Now, as for the update of what we have, what I told you we had an update for the Dodgers, and this is a pretty big one because we have just learned a little bit ago that Clayton Kershaw has been scratched from his Game 2 start tonight against the Braves due to back spasms. And this is big news for the Dodgers, particularly after they lost Game 1. And Kershaw's status isn't immediately clear about how serious this situation is, but not having him out there for Game 2 is a big loss for the Dodgers. They're going to turn to Tony Gonsolin to start tonight for the Dodgers. He was really good this season, a 2.31 ERA, but it's still certainly a downgrade from Clayton Kershaw, and Gonsolin also hasn't pitched in 17 days. So that's the new information we have. Clayton Kershaw has been scratched from his Game 2 start tonight. It was supposed to go opposite of Ian Anderson. Instead, it'll be Tony Gonsolin against Ian Anderson tonight. Gonsolin, again, pitching for the first time in 17 days. Now, I am seeing here John Morosi of MLB Network reporting that the Dodgers are optimistic Kershaw will be ready to start by Game 4 of the NLCS, and Game 3 has not been ruled out either. But it appears they're targeting Game 4 for Clayton Kershaw at this point. It seems like relatively good news, but considering, as opposed to him, being out for the series or anything like that. But again, Clayton Kershaw out for Game 2. That's a big development. The Dodgers really need to win tonight, of course, from their perspective. That's pretty obvious. So Tony Gonsolin going tonight. Julio Urias, who was likely to stay in the bullpen for this series, maybe he ends up going in Game 3 instead. So we'll keep an eye on that, something to monitor moving forward. Finally, in this segment, my prediction for this series, I'm going to go. And, there's a part of me that really wants to go with the Braves. I really like the Braves. This is a fun team this year. I really want to pick the Braves, but from the very beginning of the season, I picked the Dodgers to win the World Series. Entering the postseason, I picked the Dodgers to win the World Series. And on this past weekend's episode of The Bonfire, I picked the Dodgers to win the World Series. So I'm not going to waver from that, despite them losing Game 1 and not having Kershaw for Game 2. I'm going with the Dodgers still. I'm saying Dodgers in 7. in this series, but I really want to say the Braves, and I certainly would not have any problem if the Braves win this series because this is a really fun team. This series, all of a sudden, Braves not having to go against Kershaw tonight, and they have a 1-0 series lead. This could be really interesting to watch this week to see how this plays out. But I'm sticking with Dodgers in the NLCS over the Braves in 7 games. So we're going to take our final break of the show here on today's broadcast. When we come back, what's on deck? We'll preview tonight's matchups a little bit more. We touched on it a little bit. We'll talk about the ALCS matchup, pitching matchup on tap, and we'll let you know about those game times as well. That's coming up next here on Around the Bases from 110 Sports. All right, welcome back one final time on this Tuesday, October 13th, to Around the Bases from 110 Sports. Just time here for what's on deck today, and we have NLCS Game 2 starting this evening at 6:05 p.m. Eastern. That game on FS1. It'll be Ian Anderson on the mound for the Braves. We talked about him last week. The 22-year-old rookie has been outstanding this postseason. He's tossed 11 and 2/3 shutout innings with 17 strikeouts, 5 hits, and just 3 walks this season. He was supposed to be opposed by Clayton Kershaw. That is now no longer the case. As we just mentioned, it'll be Tony Gonsolin on the mound for the first time in several days, multiple weeks for Gonsolin since he's been on the mound. So that'll be interesting to watch and how deep he's able to go today for the Dodgers, as they really need to get the bats going against the Braves in Game 2. ALCS Game 3 is this evening as well. That one starts at 8:40 p.m. Eastern on TBS. It'll be Ryan Yarborough against Jose Urquidy in this game. Yarborough threw 5 innings in relief in Game 4 of the ALDS last Thursday, so he could go fairly deep in this game. He posted a 3.56 ERA in about 55 innings during the regular season. And Urquidy, meanwhile, he gave up 4 earned runs, all of them on solo homers, over 4 1/3 innings in his Game 3 start against the A's during the ALDS. Obviously hoping for better tonight. He posted a strong 2.73 ERA in roughly 30 innings this season. So Yarborough versus Urquidy tonight in ALCS Game 3. So as far as the importance of tonight's games, obviously The Dodgers don't want to fall behind 2-0 in the series, and they don't have Clayton Kershaw on the mound tonight. So it's clearly a game they just need to get the bats going, plain and simple. And they're going up against a rookie in Ian Anderson who has been lights out. So it's going to be a very fascinating game to watch this evening. And then obviously the stakes are pretty clear in the ALCS. Rays win, and it's a 3-0 series lead, and that series is very much, pretty much over, if that makes any sense. So the Astros, they're in a position where this is pretty much as close to a must-win as you can have, because you fall behind 3-0 in the series, and you're pretty much done. So Astros, the stakes are high tonight. They're going up against Ryan Yarbrough and the Rays. So we'll keep an eye on that, and then of course we'll have games continuing into Wednesday as well. As I take a look here at the Wednesday scoreboard, the Dodgers-Braves game is scheduled to begin at 5:05. That'll be Game 3 of the NLCS, and then Game 4 of the ALCS will be at 7:40 p.m. Central Time. So it's 6 for the Dodgers-Braves game tomorrow, and 8:40 for the Rays-Astros game tomorrow. If the Rays win tonight, then they'll be in a position to potentially sweep the series in tomorrow's game. Otherwise, it'll be a 2-1 Rays lead. But that is going to do it for today's broadcast of Around the Bases here from 110 Sports. Thanks so much for watching. A couple reminders as we head out. To subscribe to the 110 Sports newsletter, you can do that at 110sportsmedia.com. Right side of the homepage is all the information you need to subscribe. Our live coverage continues, of course, as always, as Josh Molinix is back with his show, The J Mole Show, tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern. And then Touchline Talk with Josh Doring returns on Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern. And we'll be back with you one final time here on Around the Bases for this week on Thursday as well at 1 p.m. Eastern, as always. And make sure to subscribe to 110 Sports on YouTube. You can just search for 110 Sports, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, whether that be Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can search for 110 Sports. You can search for The Bonfire. You can search for the Jays for Days podcast, and you can subscribe to any or all of those. But that's going to do it for today's broadcast. As always, thanks for watching. Enjoy the baseball tonight and tomorrow, and I will talk to you again on Thursday.